All right, the time's now 1:30. Good afternoon, everybody. We're here for part 3 of our conversation with finance today. We are moving into financial operations. Joining me today are Councilors Hogan, Nave, Gethers, Paniagua, Jones-Rouser, and Monto. President Hudson will be joining us shortly. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to you folks.
Michael Canizero, Commissioner of Finance.
Anne-Marie Deegan, First Deputy Commissioner of Finance.
In financial operations, I'll let kind of Anne-Marie walk us through, but just, there's been a concerted effort by the city as far as trying to, we've kind of, you won't see it this year, I think we finally completed it, but really financial operations encompasses everything, accounts payable, so those are disbursements, getting payments out the door, and also payroll. So that's really the primary focuses, and then the goal with financial operations is to kind of broaden the responsibility in relation to grants and capital project management as well.
The indicators are all showing NA. Would you just run us through some of the highlights of what the department does, please?
Sure. So payroll, obviously, they're charged with making sure that all the city staff gets paychecks. So that is collecting and inputting all of those timesheets that we put together. That's their responsibility. The management of grants and capital projects, that's kind of, we're just starting kind of roll this out more officially. So we have people in place that will be assigned to various departments throughout the city. So they have a point of contact in the finance office to kind of help transition between that, like operations of a department versus finance stuff. So they'll have a person they can reach out to, whether it's for their operating accounts or their capital projects accounts. And then accounts payable is pretty much the team that gets all the checks out the door, so to speak. So any vendor payments that we are processing, that team is entering them into the system and cutting checks to get those out the door.
So as you go down through these functions, can you tell me where's the AS400 still in here?
Primarily the payroll piece.
100% inside the AS400, or are we?
Yes, yeah, and so you have different instances of when we say AS400, that's kind of an umbrella for 3 different modules of the AS400. So you have AS400 timekeeping, so that's really the admin assistants in FinOps would be managing that. So that's going into every individual employee and marking, yep, they worked this day for 7.25 hours. Nope, they took a vacation day this day. So that's all the time and attendance modules tracking the employee accruals. This is their sick balance. This is their vacation. This is, their benefits, how those have accrued. So that's the AS400 time and attendance module. And then typically that person prepares kind of an Excel summary of, this is all the department, this is what they're supposed to get paid this week. So for AS400 payroll, they care, but they don't care as much as did they take a vacation day or a sick day, especially for like biweekly employees, because we're going to be paying them, 36.25 hours regardless. If they took a vacation or sick day, like you're still getting a full paycheck. So that's where the AS400 payroll is being processed. So that's really the payroll clerks and the payroll supervisor are working in that instance of AS400. Bi-weekly is exception only, so unless we know otherwise, and you have like an unpaid day, which is fairly unusual for a bi-weekly employee, you're gonna get paid your normal check amount, whereas for the weekly employees, and then also anyone entitled to overtime, so that includes public safety, all of that time is manually inputted into AS400 payroll, and then timekeeping as well. So there's kind of 2, that's being entered twice. And then some departments, that third module I spoke about is the AS400 work order system. So this is how we, track employee time at a project or an activity level. So I know police overtime all gets charged to an activity. So you could have Syracuse lacrosse game against Virginia this weekend. All of that time is being entered a third time in the AS400 work order system.
Yikes.
Agreed.
So, Mike, talking about overtime being tracked to activity, is that all overtime or only some components?
All overtime is being, at least for police, is being entered at an activity level. From my perspective, I only care about certain codes in there. You know, if it's a non-reimbursable, like one of the codes is Clinton Square Rink, well, we own that and we're not charging that to anyone, so I don't really need to look at that code. Whereas some of the reimbursable overtime, you know, we are billing that back to Syracuse University being one of the biggest players. But then I know the CSO time, that gets billed back to the school district. And any of the, you know, other, you know, there's some reimbursable grants that we're taking that overtime figure and then, you know, doing a manual journal entry to get that cost onto the grant.
So from an accounting perspective, it's either reimbursable or not, but from kind of an analysis of where that's going,
And then
is that trackable? Are there reports, extracts that can?
We get a text file out of AS400, and then, yeah, we have a few different Excel schedules that kind of help self-populate that.
Yikes again.
Yeah, I think a text file has 164 variable characters in a single row, and the fact that I know that is,
So who manages the grants? Do each department manages their own grants, or do you manage for them?
that's historically what we've done, but really over these last couple of years, we're trying to, you know, with our fiscal officers and FinOps, really manage the finance piece of that grant. So as far as submitting the reimbursements and tracking the spending, you know, some departments are still doing their own, whereas really we're trying to centralize that function in finance, specifically with the fiscal officers.
When you do the overtime payment,
Mm-hmm.
so that's not necessarily in the check that the person will get every 15 or 30 days, whatever that turns out to be.
Yep.
So it's thank you. So it's an additional.
Yeah, we're basic, and so the police overtime specifically, some of that is performed in the city payment center. So we're creating an invoice, creating a bill, and
Right,
sending
that's
that
what
to the SU to you know, remit payment.
Oh,
I know, you looking at me, yeah, but I'm
You
yeah.
have a question.
I have a ton of questions, and I'm shaking my head, and I kind of hear what you're saying because of your entity, but the grants are all over the place.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
that is a problem.
Yep.
Because nobody can keep up. We can't keep up with any of the grants.
Yep.
And I think that it should be strategically done, Franklin, to where,
So, President Hudson, that's one of the reasons why we have the fiscal officers in place, to help us start to really wrap our arms around the grants and projects in all of these departments, because yes, historically, they've been left to the departments to manage. So we're trying to, you know, we've now designated people within the finance to be like, these are your departments, we need you to meet.
Or don't think the council would be opposed if we were to fund at least 2 more people in research. And then you could break it down by SPD, fire. We could know exactly what's happening in these departments. These grants are all over the place.
Yes, they are. And you see that in the audit report. We've been criticized for exactly that, President
Exactly.
Hudson, for years.
Yeah.
Predates this administration. It really goes back to,
And I get it, but right now, we
for
need
sure.
to start with now.
I-
Because we
no,
need to know what's
yeah.
happening, we need to know what's moving, we need to know where the grants are coming from, where they're being applied to. We need to know all of that.
so I will tell you that with the respect that Mike is due, the commissioner is due, the 1 year that we got a clean audit was the year that Mike spent virtually 100% of his time on the audit and doing CHIPS reimbursements. And we finally got CHIPS reimbursements done, but it took a CPA working essentially full-time on that.
And I get it,
that
and I
shouldn't be the
appreciate
case.
it, and I appreciate everything the departments do, okay? But let's stop and think about this. We have a due diligence to do too. And we
Absolutely.
can't do it if everything is willy-nilly and we don't know where it is.
100% agreed. I have
Frank,
been uncomfortable with that for a long time.
but
Yes,
I
sir.
mean, to President Hudson's point, I mean, wouldn't you think that the administration would just establish some priorities of what grants we're going to go after? I mean, this has been a problem for some time, you know? I mean, we used to get grants for the Parks Department all the time, but we only had one person to implement those grants. So we had money always left over, and you couldn't clean it up. So, I mean, I think it's sort of like we need, so, and another thing is so we don't compete against each other,
Right.
you know?
Right.
Getting grants is not nearly as difficult. I mean, it's not to say that it's easy. It is more straightforward than managing grants and reporting on grants. And we are not good at managing and reporting on grants.
We also have a technology problem, right?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Without question. We have a technology
And that's
problem.
across the board. If you just listen to Mike's answer
Yes.
regarding the S400,
It's
I
across the
said
board.
yikes, I'll keep saying yikes, we have a technology problem.
Yes, there's no question. But we have a people problem as well. But, you know, which comes first, the technology or the people that run the technology? Yeah, it's hard to
I mean,
answer that, but right
just
now,
my little simple mind, because I'm not, up on y'all level, but my thing is this, when you start talking about people or technology, we need to start looking at a way that, I mean, it may have to be both, because we may have to figure out a way of how we can interconnect all of this, because reality is we can't, and I think you guys, you're doing a phenomenal job, so I'm not taking that away, but I think that we have to look again at how we can better handle things and put things together, because I'm going to say it till the cows come home. We look real foolish at this table when we really can't put our hands on stuff that's happening around us in these departments.
that's a shared discomfort.
But you're
Because,
not the one to take the hit. We are.
oh, but believe me, when you look at an audit, the way you looked at an audit last week, that's a reflection on me, that's a reflection on Mike, that's a reflection on the team. The fact that we have that level of an audit, or that lower level of an audit, brought in front of you is a direct reflection on the work that we do. And we can't make it better without, Mike's got a mantra, it's people, it's technology, it's process. And we need all three hitting on all cylinders at the same time, and we don't. So the fact that we can't bring you interim reports, the fact that I can't give department heads interim reports, the fact that, I say this to the mayor all the time, we're a $340 million organization that closes our books once a year. We do not do a single interim close because we can't keep up with it. We can't keep up with our bank recs. We can't keep up with our grant reporting. We simply do not have the people and the technology in place to impose proper stewardship over our finances, period. And yes, President Hudson, I appreciate that ultimately that falls to you, but we should be able to provide you with the information that you need on a timely basis, and we can't.
How many people do we even have that know how to operate inside the S400?
Payroll is run by one person and a half a person who is really retired and who Mike has coerced to come back on a part-time basis, working from a beach in Florida. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, really, the Sura line and FinOps, those are retired payroll clerks that are retired employees that still work, part-time, full-time hours to help with payroll. And then we've recently made 2 hires as payroll clerks too. So they would be in the AS400, but just strictly AS400 payroll, yeah, 5 or less.
We're talking about 2024, using text files dropped into Excel to get data. That's yikes. I just keep saying it.
It's the right
Room
word.
for error has got to be gigantic.
Mike, is that because you can't find people, or you just don't have the money to pay?
I mean, I know when I will be with the city 4 years in May, and when Brad was recruiting me, I said, as long as I don't have to touch the AS400, I'm on board. It's not a software that, so this young and bright 20-something-year-old doesn't want to learn AS400, then you tell them this is what your job's going to be, well, they're not going to accept that position just because it's not, one of the newer technologies. And, what organization are they going to, if, especially, with millennials hopping around or whatnot, okay, I'm going to get 5 years of experience at the city working in AS400. No, I don't want that experience. That's just my opinion, though.
And on the other side, I mean, that's what we're in the process of doing. We're
Don't go
implementing a
nowhere,
new payroll software. That's what Oracle is.
Oracle, yeah, we talked about
so
that.
we have systems that are upcoming between Kronos and Oracle for payroll and timekeeping. That should bring us closer to where we need to be and should lessen the burden on all of those payroll
Then we
people.
cross over PeopleSoft, so we're just all of these different pieces that we're trying to patch together.
And I think the
they're
problem
not working.
with PeopleSoft is you have general ledger, so your accounting's happening there, and accounts payable for the most part. So like disbursements going out in PeopleSoft, it works. I mean, it's cumbersome and it's a lot of clicks, but so you have your expenses and our general ledger as far as all the accounting, as far as the reporting happening there. Really on the accounts receivable or revenue side, that's where we get into decentralized software land of e-tax for property taxes. AS400 water billings are happening in AS400 as well. Parking tickets take place in Ames. I believe permits maintains a manual spreadsheet as far
See, that's
as.
where I'm confused, and I'm gonna say I'm confused. I mean, Pat Nader, you were around when all of this started happening, because we beat PeopleSoft to death, okay? And we asked a lot of questions. And what I was told is, which for me, I mean, I'm not an accountant, but it looks like it would have been money better spent than to have all of these systems. They kept saying that there were modules that we can buy to add on to PeopleSoft that would do everything we're talking about doing now. So I'm just a little confused.
We never properly implemented some of those modules, specifically the accounts receivable, the project costing, which is kind of your project and grants management. I believe there's a fixed assets module as well. All fixed assets are being tracked in an Excel spreadsheet. So really it's.
So a few years ago, when we were navigating into it, it was never implemented. Is that what you just said?
Right.
Yeah.
We own them, but they're not configured.
Plus, the employee management is completely outside of all of that too, right? So,
That was supposed to be included. They
We-
said
we
we
kn-
could keep up with all of that with the modules.
So as best I can describe it, because it gets too technical for me as well, so Mike will have to correct me if I'm wrong. We turned on the core accounting. We took the general ledger out of the AS400, made no revisions to it, made no updates to it, lifted it, as the technology folks like to say, we lifted and shifted. We did nothing other than just pick it up and dump it in. We didn't turn on a significant number of modules, including human capital management. So my experience with PeopleSoft prior to coming to the city was in 1997 when it was bright and shiny and I was leaving KeyCorp. They were installing PeopleSoft solely for the people management. That was PeopleSoft's claim to fame. The city never even turned that on. So we left the people management in AS400. We left payroll in AS400. The accounting, the core accounting was the only thing that was really turned on. We have since turned on some other modules. We do a little bit of contract management, but it's not integrated with the financial system. So one of the criticisms that Bonadeo, you heard from Bonadeo last week, is we have multiple financial systems with varying levels of integration into our core system. So there's no integrated financial system in fairness anywhere in the city.
So if we would have turned those models on at the time where we could, if we had, would we be looking at Oracle today?
Yes, but for a different reason, Counselor. It's an important question because ultimately Oracle purchased PeopleSoft and they purchased it for the client base, not for the system. So they purchased it, 10 years ago, and they started giving warnings. We're not keeping this forever. Eventually you're going to have to migrate to another platform. That day is coming. We don't know exactly when. It's going to be in the next couple of years. So we'd be looking at Oracle anyways, but probably not as quickly. The county is taking their time. The school district has already said, we're not interested in dealing with PeopleSoft any
And
longer.
Oracle is like an extension of PeopleSoft.
It's owned by the same company. So
Okay.
that's why the migration
important
is,
to know.
the migration's easier because they're owned by the same company. But the PeopleSoft platform is going to be discontinued. It's a question of when, not if. So
So
yes.
the county
we'd-
is going
we'd
to
still
have
be
to
looking at-
switch over as well, because we went running behind the county
The
to keep
county
up
is-
with PeopleSoft.
The county is definitely going to have to switch over. They're a little bit behind us, and we're a little bit behind the school district. But we're all having to make the same decision.
So Frank, we do know that Oracle's extended support through 2034.
So we
At
know
least
that
10 years.
we know that the security support, the functional support is already starting to slow down. So, but yes, they will keep the security support and the security patches continuing, but they will not add new functionality. They've already discontinued the bridge. So the reason the budget struggles is that the bridge between PeopleSoft and Hyperion, the software bridge, has already been discontinued. So we don't have any way for budget to directly talk to PeopleSoft any longer. So it's slowly becoming more and more difficult. And there was never any support. One of the reasons why they never moved, I think, payroll to PeopleSoft is because the AS400 bridge to PeopleSoft was problematic at best. So it's, to use President Hudson's word, hodgepodge is probably a fair characterization.
I think it's fair to say, Frank, that as we deal with turnover attrition rate, that part of our dysfunctionalities would continue to not give us the edge to attract talent. Wouldn't you say?
I think that's fair. I think that was the Commissioner of Finance's point, is it's tough for me to recruit somebody out of college with an accounting degree and tell them that they're going to work on a 40-year-old system. That's not necessarily
That's a no.
appealing.
And deeper than that, because then you're talking about processes. So this administration leaves, another administration come in, they're gonna go through their process, they're gonna decide, oh, we don't want neither one of these, and here we go again, and we just dumping taxpayer dollars into all of these systems that's not working for us.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
Commissioner, I want to ask you a question. So whenever we update our software, the people who are working there at the moment, do they know it, or do they have to be trained?
There's always a component of training.
So they will train?
Yeah.
So that's going to cost?
Yeah. That's a significant amount of the cost of a transition is the training and change management and updating of processes, no question. That's why you don't want to do it very often.
So also, when a person wants to retire, are we recruiting within the people working all the departments? DPW, maybe as a cashier, are we recruiting people to give them an opportunity?
Yeah.
So we're not outsourcing?
No, as much as we possibly can, yes, Council.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not trying to be funny. I'm thinking, hell, maybe we can outsource to one person that can line us up until we're ready to do for ourselves.
I think that's a lot of what EY is doing. I mean, they're building out a lot of the processes for us of this is how you maximize the functionality in the system, and this is where it links up. You know, we're having multiple calls as far as, you know, what is best practice? Like in a perfect world, this is what we would have, realizing like we're not going to have best practice for everything. You know, what do we think is, you know, administratively right for the city of Syracuse?
Because I'm not advocating outsources. That's my biggest pet peeve. But if they can get us lined up and then 5 years down the road, hand it to us on a platter, and we're under one system, not 45.
No, and that's some of the work we've done over the last couple of years. I mean, the HUD grants, so your CDBG, ESG, home, lead, all of that activity was being recorded in, you know, I'd say shadow accounting system in this Macola accounting system that then we were just taking the numbers at year end and plopping them in, whereas now all of that, all of those payments, all of that GL, you know, accounting is happening in PeopleSoft. So that was a change we made about a year and a half ago, and it's a challenge. I mean, it's you know, with road reconstruction, when they're gonna, you know, mill and pave a road, what do? They stop traffic on the road because you can't mill and pave a road when cars are coming. Well, we can't stop payroll. We can't just stop paying people. So we're doing, you know, I think I used the analogy as far as building a train while the train stays on the tracks. I mean, people are still getting paid while we're still trying to build out this new system.
I'm saying, yeah.
And I think really we're just looking, you hit the nail on the head as far as the integration, because the accountants right now are, logging into multiple sub-ledger systems, whether that's e-tax, AIMS, and then doing a daily report, and that's, us posting a journal entry that we turned on the the accounts receivable module in PeopleSoft at the beginning of this fiscal year. We're really crawling before we walk. So we're only doing a couple different revenue streams in the AR module. So all the police overtime billings we talked about before, now we're actually creating an invoice in AR PeopleSoft. We've had a lot of hiccups on the way because now it's like, oh, are we double recording this, or how do we book the cash when we receive it? Like, do you have to do that in the module? So we've had hiccups. But, as far as that accounts receivable module, we think we have started to build that out a little bit. But with all of our different revenue streams and all the different softwares, it's tough to be like, okay, let's do all of our revenue in AR.
Commissioner, I just want to follow up on Madam's question earlier about, potentially considering temporary outsourcing until it can catch us up. Is there even a bandwidth outside of, outside to even want to deal with AS400 at all?
I think, and the issue we found with the Kronos project was, modern electronic timekeeping software. Now that's going to feed into the AS400. So there could be an outsource option, but without, all of our technology kind of staying in the same decade, you dumb down the technology to meet where your older technology is. And that's what we found out with the Kronos, is we were trying to automate out-of-title pay and a couple of the other pay elements that get entered as dollar amounts in the AS400 system as opposed to hours. And that proved to be difficult, whereas now the integration, from Kronos to like an Oracle payroll software solution, that's a much easier, simple integration. And we're going to be seeing some of those benefits just because that technology is, at the same level. If we bring someone in and say, okay, build out capital projects and build out grants management, well, now we're kind of dumbing down any newer technology to PeopleSoft, knowing that, I don't think it's a super immediate, like, oh, it's going away, but like, it's eventually going away. And just the demos we've seen with the, the Oracle Cloud Fusion payroll product, it's simple. You click a button, pay someone. Okay, this is intuitive. I'm not going into my green screen mainframe AS400 of got to click F9, then I got to click F7, and now I need to know I got to go specifically to this box that I have to key over to instead of using a mouse. So I think with newer technology, I mean, it's just going to be more intuitive and should hopefully produce, better results.
Mike, you talk about people, technology, processes.
Yep.
Leaving efficiency aside, because I'm not 100% convinced that efficiency translates directly to saving money. If we invest, and this is probably a longer term conversation, if we invest in the technology and processes, is there a return on investment? A financial return?
I mean, I think improved processes, then there's, for finance, potentially a reduction in headcount, just because of improved processes. I think with better timekeeping, we would have better visibility in overtime, so we could track overtime better and, hold departments more accountable to overtime. It's just where we're so reactive now. The AS400 timekeeping grant piece, well, we set up a grant for $200,000 and department charges $200,000 in labor. Well, they already spent $200,000 with an external contractor that now there's no grant budget to reclass over. So that's going to be an expense that's just eaten by the general fund. So just with how reactive we are right now, I mean, I think with better technology, we would see a reduction in overtime and potentially headcount. And then you would actually be getting, here's a general fund budget to actual 10 days after month end, which should be industry standard, but we're nowhere close to that today.
So there's the utility, but you talk about a reduction in headcount, reduction in overtime, and I guess increased efficacy of our grant operations. Do we have a way to quantify all of that? Is it, because I know we're talking big numbers in terms of investment. Before we go down that road, can we have some type of answer to say, if we invest X, we'll see a potential annual return of Y?
Can we guarantee that? I think we'd be blowing smoke if we said yes. We're looking at something in the range of a amortization of $650,000 a year over 10 years to complete the project. That's the full boat. That's human capital management, that's finishing payroll, as the deputy commissioner just described, and that's doing the upgraded modernization of the ERP. Is there $1 million a year? Is there $750,000 a year in savings? I would suggest that there is enough timekeeping difficulty alone, the fact that what we've run into and found, I'm going to be kind here, pockets of discrepancies that range in the hundreds of thousands of dollars in the way timekeeping is done across the city over the last 2 years as we've implemented a new timekeeping system. How many millions of dollars are lying there? My predecessor, I've read her notes, estimated between $6 and $10 million in timekeeping problems alone. Can I quantify that for you? No. Would I give you that same number? No. Do I think it's in the millions? Yes.
Is overtime included in that? Because we can't properly track it?
That's overtime, and that's inconsistencies in timekeeping. That is not the inefficiencies that we're talking about here. That is not the amount of dollars that we are missing or reimbursements that are slow on grants. We are not timely on our grant reimbursements. And we occasionally lose, where we've occasionally had to give funders back some of their money because it wasn't spent and we didn't know it wasn't spent. So can I assure you that it's more than $650,000 a year? No. Do I intuitively think that with the number of problems that we've discovered over the last 2 years, it's going to be darn close to that? Yes.
And then one more question, not to cut you off, Counselor. So let me ask this question. Is there any municipality that you found that's in this century with their technology?
I would ask you the reverse. I don't know of anybody that's still our size that's still using the technology that we're using.
So they're in the century we're in.
Yeah, I think we're, yeah. Are they in the 21st century? I think a lot of them are in the 20th century.
And
But,
where are we, 19?
are they, we're looking to get into the 21st century. We're looking, for all the reasons that we've talked about. It's greater efficiency, it's greater effectiveness, it's greater stewardship, it's better reporting, it's more integrated systems.
And I know it's frustrating for
greater
you
security.
as well. I get it, because I know the work that you do, but I mean.
It is not an inexpensive proposition to fix, and we understand that.
On top of the roads, on top of the water lines, on top of the housing, on top of everything we got.
Without question. Without question. I know, the consultants that we're working with, Ernst & Young, did some similar work with agencies in New York State and went through very similar, that New York State was looking to modernize for most of the same reasons that we are. And so we're benefiting a little bit from the work that EY did with New York State. So I don't want to say it's a common problem. It's not a unheard of problem in other places, but I think we're among the laggards in terms of the way we use the
I'm not gonna drop
system.
this on you because it's not all on you, because we had administrations that dropped the ball decades ago that should have kind of tried to keep us up. So, I don't know.
It is the same kind of investment that's required in internal infrastructure that we require of external. We know the position that Commissioner Awald's in because of decades and decades of disinvestment in the water
Position that
system.
neighborhoods are in decades and decades of not
Yeah.
investing in communities. So,
And
yeah, I get it.
it's no different with our internal systems. It's just less visible until we have to do something like pay a bonus to the fire department and not be able to do it in a timely or correct manner. Those are the things where, I lie awake at night and go, what the heck? We did. We pulled it off because Mike made it happen. And it physically shouldn't have happened, Counselor, but he figured out a way to make it happen. I don't want to know how he did that, but he did it.
Interesting. Yeah, right, interesting.
By making the firefighters happy, he made somebody else mad. I haven't heard from them yet, so.
That would be accurate.
What I wanted to say is I find a lot of dedicated people in here. You're dedicated, Michael, you and your staff are very dedicated to this city, and no one can ever take that away from you.
So this is my opportunity, and I appreciate 30 seconds. The way this budget came together this year, the lack of systems, the lack of technology, the manual labor that this team put in this year, they always do. But what they went through this year is nothing short of heroic. They pulled off something that physically should have been impossible, and they did it largely with good humor. Largely with good humor. This is physically the toughest budget since I've been here. And they did a tremendous job in pulling it together. The numbers that you have in front of you, honestly, a week ago, I would have told you you weren't going to get them. But they pulled it off. So, thanks.
From account clerk to a fiscal officer.
So I can explain some position changes that we made. So
Thank you.
what ended up happening is we were shifting some focus to the grants management and operation dollars to the fiscal officer level. So we had a group of fiscal officers. We had one person that wasn't at that level that we were, in this budget, we moved them to. That shifts another person up into that administrative officer role. Admin assistant is generally where I have most of the staff, the accounts payable staff. I have a couple holdovers that were account clerks. One retired, that was the account clerk one. So basically the account clerk one becomes an administrative officer. I have an administrative officer becoming an administrative, I take that back. I have administrative assistant going to administrative officer, and I have an administrative officer going to a fiscal officer. So we really just went from, like, we incrementally, yes, that is true, but like we stepped them all up together so we're more in line and able to kind of maximize what information needs to get out to the departments.
And promote from within. I mean, that was, people have been here a couple of years. They were, inquiring of a promotion, and this is what we thought kind of worked best.
Can you tell me what a travel coordinator is?
Yeah.
So that's a new position for us.
Okay, what is it?
So basically, it's a person who anybody in the city can reach out to, say, I'm traveling, what do I need to do to get that done? So they're gonna be the point person for all things travel. That person will sit at police because they have the bulk of the travel needs, but they will be able to input travel. We have a travel authorization process. So somebody in my team enters that into PeopleSoft, and then it goes through a bunch of approvals. So this will all be funneled to one person, so they can kind of track that, make sure the right information is getting into the system at the beginning instead of like it being kicked back. And it seems like, why do we need a person to do that? Because travel's all over the place. If you look at the budget, I pulled some numbers from this current year. We spent about $500,000 in travel. It's kind of a big number, and nobody's really overseeing that. Like,
So you said they're gonna sit in police?
will sit in police.
So why isn't this position in the police budget?
So it's a fiscal, it's a finance employee, much like our fiscal officers are. I have fiscal officers that sit in police. I have ones that sit at parks and DPW. They're all centrally located as a finance employee, stationed in these various spots that really need somebody there on the day-to-day.
Okay, I get it. I'm a little slow, right? So, in parentheses, I kind of would like that when you say travel coordinator sits with police and whatever the other financial person, then I can know that it's in your budget, but they're sitting in police.
Okay.
Okay?
Can do.
Thank you.
Is most of our travel expense in police travel?
Most of it's in police, yeah.
What about for the departments that are, we're seeing that they're sending folks to different trainings or, I mean, there's some travel required. I'm sure at some point, are they part of that travel coordinator too, or no?
Yeah, so ultimately, this person will be in charge of any travel that happens throughout the city.
Throughout the city,
So
For us too?
if we're paying for it
Don't
in the
look
city,
confused.
yes.
Let's go.
I mean, if you have budgeted dollars for it, then yeah, ultimately you should be putting in a travel request and it would run through this person, yes.
Okay.
And then we have like the city purchase card, which is, I think most departments have a credit card kind of for emergency purchases and really travel-related purchases. So the goal is to transition that purchase card reconciliation that's currently being performed by an accountant, that they would also be responsible for managing the purchase cards.
That's it?
I think I got something else? No. I know you missed me, right?
Fellow councilors, any other additional questions?
Out of title pay is actually, that's specifically pertained to the travel coordinator. I know we're still waiting on the county, that will be a CSCA position. We're waiting on that title to be created at a civil service level. So right now, that travel coordinator is a grade 11. So we're paying, I believe she's an accountant 1, we're paying out a title at that grade 11 because we're having her do that travel coordinator responsibilities.
So it's really just waiting for the county to get the position created,
And then that would go away.
and then it'll go away. Yep.
Bless you.
Thank you.
You good, Patrona? Jimmy? This side of the table? Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you for your time all afternoon. Does anyone have a motion to adjourn? Second? Second.
Thank you.
Thank you very
All
much.
right, what's next?
Next, I think is the DPW, right?
Law, no, law.
No, law cancel.